It's because they have the same color palette as Halloween. They're orange, black, and purple. That's what makes them the Halloween twins. Hello! I'm gonna do my best to keep this one short. I was actually playing around with this in a live stream that I did. It seemed like a cool thing to do for the start of 5.5 because there is a lot going on in this patch. Of course, most of those things involving Iansan, but I was forcing her into all sorts of different teams that wouldn't normally want her just for the sake of getting to play her more. And if you couldn't tell, I like Sethos a lot, so when I got a suggestion to do a Sethos team, I went for it. Given that Sethos and Aggravate doesn't really gain a lot from attack, he mostly scales from EM, my initial thought was to go with Overload, and the initial suggestion was to do something around Sackbow and Thundering Fury. Use the cooldown reduction from Thundering Fury and the cooldown reset from Sackbow to spam a bunch of charge attacks and do Sethos things. Except the issue kind of starts to rear its head with Thundering Fury. It only works particularly well in Aggravate teams because the Aggravate reaction doesn't require much of any other element. Sethos is free to spam as much Electro as he wants, and he will still get reactions and trigger the set's cooldown reduction effect. Overload is a much larger issue because you need to have someone who applies enough Pyro to keep up with Sethos' high Electro application. Of course, that's where Xiangling comes in. So I was messing around with my normal Sethos charge shots shenanigan stuff, but nothing was really coming together. The skill reset seemed a little superfluous, and I wasn't really moving enough to keep up Iansan's attack buff, and my level 2 charge shots were just eating up too much of my energy until I had a bit of a realization. Because I don't get the additional EM scaling that the Aggravate reaction would apply, I'm mostly focusing on my attack buffs. I could do my level 1 charge shots without much of a loss to my talent scaling. And Sethos' level 1 charge shots also have the upside of consuming a lot less energy. Essentially, how his charge shot speed up mechanic works is that he consumes energy over time while charging the shot. So the earlier you release the shot, the less energy it will consume. And he also gets a flat 50% reduction on the energy that level 1 charge shots consume. So that solved the issue of my energy, but I still wasn't doing enough movement to keep up Iansan buff. And I wasn't applying enough Pyro to consistently trigger Thundering Fury. But I found that those two things could be solved in the same way. By canceling your shot with a dash cancel to the right of the enemy, not only do you get enough movement to keep up Iansan's buff, you also make Pyronado hit faster and apply more Pyro. And you can see that I wasn't really using the cooldown reset on Sackbow, so I just swapped for an attack percent stat stick. So yeah, crit stat stick. Kind of whatever you've got. I mentioned I'm using Thundering Fury. I don't think it's necessary. This is just what I like to play with. Got my crit circlet to balance out my ratio. I've got my damage percent goblet, but I'm actually running an attack sands in this team. There is reason to go EM because Sethos is triggering a lot of overloads here, but my EM sands is a lot worse than my attack sands, so I'm running attack. And don't get me wrong, this team is one of the hardest teams that I've played, and it's pretty inconsistent in multi-target, but if you can get it off, the reward is surprisingly high. So what did I do? Of course I did a few Abyss runs. Okay. Full, almost 2 minutes on this side. If I am not a complete nincompoop,
care for a dance?
I can do this.
Dance with me!
Now this Abyss, it sucks and it's horrible and I hate it, so I only did the first floor, and this might be the hardest chamber on second side for this team. The Eremite that spawns before the Jade Plume can be pretty hard to hit because she's so small and she does a lot of weird flips. And even though there were some pretty significant time losses through gameplay flubs, I messed up a few things on the Jade Plume itself because, as I said, this team is hard to play, but even with those, I cleared in just over 90 seconds. With more practice, I definitely see myself clearing under 90. Starting too slow. No, okay. Oh no. This is horrible. No, Xiangling, you're ruining everything. Get over here. Dead. That was so scuffed. That was so scuffed, but I did it. And I think it was honestly in less than a minute and a half, or around a minute and a half. Yeah, okay. If I didn't mess it up near the end, I'm watching the playback. Oh, it was a minute and 35 seconds. That's crazy. That is wild. Oh my god. Should I be allowed to do this? Given how difficult it is to play, I think this is only really a viable team in single target, especially against larger bosses. I think this team stands as a really strong example of what you can do in Genshin if you get creative, with Sethos himself being a particularly strong example of this philosophy. If you put in the time to learning this game, Sethos will reward you in so many weird ways. And to be clear, this isn't even particularly hyper-optimized. The gear that I'm using in this video, Polar Star and Thundering Fury, I don't even know if it's the best option for this team. This is just what I thought might be good and what I've enjoyed using. My Xiangling is pretty good. I'm pretty proud of her, but she is also the only unit that I have at C6 in this team. Chevy's C4, Iansan C3, Sethos is C1, and his C1 only affects his level 2 charge shots, so it's not even doing anything in this team. C2 being a 30% electro damage bonus would be strong here. Talent levels on his normal also would be appreciated. Chevy's C6 could also provide a pretty decent increase here. And I think this is a situation in which Iansan C4 could be pretty nice. Xiangling wants to snapshot Iansan's buff, so you would gain the extra 8 Night Soul, and with good enough play, you might even be able to get enough overflow for C6 to function. So while this team isn't breaking any sort of DPS records, and it's pretty difficult to play, it's performing pretty well for an all 4-star team that doesn't have a lot of its relevant constellations, and on its surface, looks very scuffed. So yeah, I think I'm gonna cut it here. Hope y'all enjoyed this one, and remember to stay creative.